The meeting will be recorded, and any recording will subsequently be available for public consumption. Okay. Right, can we have the Sederunt apologies?
Thank you, Leader. Afternoon, members. 17 members present. I'm not aware of any apologies.
Apologies from Councillor Collins.
Thank you.
Okay, any declarations of interest? No. Moving on to item 3, which is the minute of the meeting of the 18th of March. I'm happy to move. Can I have a seconder? Thank you. Item 4, which is the corporate capital investment strategy. This is the final outturn position in 2013-14, incorporating land and ICT business systems outturn positions. This is a report by the Head of Finance. This report sets out the financial outturn position on the Council's capital investment strategy for financial year 2013-14. Members will see that the outturn position is consistent with the monitoring position we had reported to this committee in January. Due to the development of the capital investment strategy and the active management of the programme, the final outturn position reflects acceleration of works to the value of $526,000 from the 2014-15 capital programme. The position with net capital spending for land asset class and progress on capital projects are set out in Appendix 4, and for the ICT business systems, this is contained within Appendix 5. Alistair, you want to come in and something first?
It was really a question, sir, at the time that you deemed to be appropriate.
Oh, okay. Paul, do you have anything to add?
Nothing to add at this stage, thank you. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay, Alistair.
Thanks very much indeed, Leader. It's in relation to paragraph 2.2 of the recommendations, sir, and we're talking about net capital receipts of £130,000 generated last financial year, as detailed, Leader, in Appendix 2. There's reference made there, sir, to sale of the proceeds of Bargrennan Hall, £56,000. Now, my understanding, Leader, was in fact that this went, if memory serves me correctly, to a Wigton Area Committee on the basis of a proportion of that receipt being paid to Glentrool and Bargrennan Trust to assist them in the set-up, their running costs, and to give them form of funding, Leader, to take forward their involvement in such as the Dark Skies and the Biosphere project. My understanding, sir, is that unfortunately the relevant report coming back to this committee to ask for agreement or otherwise on that has not come thus far. And my question, sir, is that, in the noting of this today, I take it that that would not, in fact, prejudice the report when it does come before this committee. That's really the assurance I'm seeking, Leader. Thank you.
Paul, do you want to comment?
Yeah, Councillor Gedge is right, that wouldn't prejudice that report coming forward. I think it's important to note, though, that if that money were to be ring-fenced for that purpose, it would create a pressure on the capital programme. That would be the case whether it's ring-fenced at this stage or ring-fenced when the report comes forward.
Okay, I think Bargrennan's coming to next month's committee. No other questions? Sorry, can't see you there, Jane. Sorry, I apologise.
Yes, please, Leader. On page 16, just with respect to the Council's currently waiting confirmation of a Cashback for Communities Award from Sport Scotland to be offset. Now, how much, and that's not new, is it? That was predicated in the whole proposal originally.
Yes, that's correct. The 50,000 was in the application originally, but it was just we're just waiting on confirmation from Mark Cowan, Head of Facilities at Sport Scotland.
Okay, Jill.
Thank you, Leader. It's on page 9, 7.4, and I just wanted sort of reassurance that everything's been done to market the premises that are actually for sale, because I do realise that we haven't met the targets that we were looking to meet. So just want a reassurance that everything's being marketed as it should be.
Yes, that is the case. In particular, there's work being progressed in terms of High Cemetery Lodge, Dumfries and Dunbar Cottage at the Tongland depot. I think that there's other initiatives in relation to Stapleton Road and at the minute, which means that isn't being actively marketed at the minute. But in terms of the other depots, they're already all being progressed as anticipated.
Okay, no other questions. Can we go to the recommendations? We're asked to note net capital spending. 2, we're asked to note the net capital receipts. And 3, note the net capital spending. And 4, again, note the net capital spending 2013-14. Okay, thank you. Move on to item 5, which is the corporate revenue outturn report. This is a report by Head of Finance again. This report gives members an overview of the Council's financial performance for the year end 31st of March 2014. It also provides an overview of performance against the budget for each of the Council services, and also provides details of year-end balances and earmarked committee amounts. We continue to maintain the general fund balances at the minimum of 2% previously agreed. There's been a shortfall in capital receipts, and we were required to make provision for this by the writing off of £411,000. The Council will be asked at its next meeting to consider the report following the integrated children's inspection, and I think it's prudent that we earmark funding to address this issue, which will arise from the inspection, in a sum of £150,000 as recommended in this respect. The service performance against budget is detailed in Appendix 1, and it's worth noting that the last reported position was anticipated of a £350,000 potential overspend in social work budget, and this has been reduced to £49,000, so I think there's been a lot of hard work done in that, and it's going the right way. At the end of this financial year, due to the commitment of members and officers to control expenditure and to the receipt of additional income. Gillian, do you have anything to add to this?
Nothing to add. Happy to take any questions.
Members?
Thank you, Leader. It's with regard to the social work. I think this is a positive story that's come out. I think as long as I've been in the council since 1999, there's always been concerns over the budget. And I think through that time we've worked at it to actually bring it back into line, and there was some measures put in last year, and I see by the report that the work's ongoing. Are we confident that we're at a position now where, I think there was other years where we thought we were there, but we went back and looked at some things and we found that we were further away from where we should have been. Are we confident this is now the figure that should be there?
Paul?
Yes, certainly I'm confident in terms of the current position in regard to the social work budget in comparison to where we were, say, a year ago. I think the social work budget will always have challenges. There's always issues with changes in client numbers, changes in client needs, so it's always a degree of volatility with that budget, but certainly the controls that are in place are much improved what they were before. Also, some of the work that's been done by members in terms of adjusting the budgets going forward, it's recognised some of the specific issues that were in there, so I think we're now on effectively an even keel with regard to social work budget, but it will need very careful monitoring and management going forward.
Jane?
Thanks. Sort of slight party pooper, Jane. I mean, I agree with members, and I wrote down this is showing a strong management grip on budgets. That's great. But of course, it is against an injection of funds. I mean, we mustn't forget we've upped the budgets. And though this is very welcome, make no mistake, I think we should remember that we have constantly supported social work, because there is sometimes a sense out there that in fact that we don't, but we do regularly, yearly. Can I ask, on page 32, which is the Capital Fund, the Renewable and Repair Fund, I should have picked this up earlier, but I never have. The Cuckoo Bridge regeneration monies of £879,000. Now, I seem to remember that also included Dumfries Town Centre. That was made explicit all those many years ago, that that was to be part and parcel also of Dumfries Town Centre. And so I'm curious to know why we've not been using that money there rather than we've been dipping into the second homes monies. And I just wonder why we haven't been using that as opposed to the second homes monies. You'll understand I'm quite twitchy about the second homes monies, bearing in mind it comes from rural parts.
Paul? To be honest, I'd probably have to look at that in a bit more detail. I didn't appreciate that there had been a kind of choice in terms of funding source for the works on the town centre. Happy to have a look at that and come back to members.
As you can see in the paper, that I'm looking to review that funding and bring a report back to committee at the soonest opportunity to see for members' consideration, with a range of options for members' consideration as how they would wish this money to be allocated. Because again, I'm intending to look through all of our reserves and balances with a clinical eye to see if there's a way to use the money smarter or better in the immediate term for some of the balances that have sat for a while. So therefore, we're looking to bring a report back with Paul to future committee or as soon as possible to give members options and choices.
Jim?
Thanks, Chair. Appendix 1 indicates a continuing substantial saving on teacher refresh. How long is this saving projected to continue?
Paul?
What happens there is that because the teachers that are replaced come in at the bottom of the scale, there is a diminishing saving year on year as those teachers move up through the increments in a particular pay band. So we're expecting to see further temporary surpluses for the next 2 years, but they'll be at materially reduced levels than what we actually received in the year just past.
Right, Ivor?
Councillor Maitland's just reminded me of something on the Cuckoo Bridge one. There used to be a case that within the allocation, the money was being given to North West Dumfries for regeneration, and I think that was stipulated by government at a stage, but the interest that was paid on the money that was in there, is that still being added back into the account? And I think that was the money that we could be used for additional works.
I think, Paul, you've
The interest is still being applied, yes. Yep.
Yeah. Alistair?
Thanks very much indeed, sir. Was it not also the case, the Leader, on occasions that money has been used, as it were, for projects out with these regeneration areas? And I seem to think in certain instances as well that from a housing subcommittee perspective, Leader, that Second Homes Fund money has been used, as it were, other than rural Dumfries and Galloway. And my reason for making the point, sir, is that I would be uneasy to see us going down a particular route, of hypothecating, or whatever the correct term would be, reserves and balances, within sort of so-called geographic areas in the region. I don't think that's the way of the future. We're under enough pressure as it is. We will be under increasing pressure, and I think we should be using our balances to the best extent possible for the benefit, Leader, of the region as a whole. I want to make my position clear on that.
I think there is a review going on with it, and there'll be further detail coming back regarding that. Okay, and members will be able to scrutinise it. Can we move to the recommendations? Can we agree 2.1, 2.2, 2.3 and 2.4? Moving on to item 6, which is the Land Asset Class Programme, 2014-15, 16-17. This is a report by the Director of Planning, Housing and Environment. We're being asked to consider the Land Asset Class Capital Programme for 2014-15, 16-17 and approve the proposed spend of 2014-15. Appendix 1 details the resource, which is £1.8 million available for spending under this capital programme, and Appendix 2 sets out the individual programmes projects proposed. I think Stephen Herriot's here to answer questions regarding this. I'll open it up to members. Alistair?
Thanks very much, sir. It's in relation to paragraph 3.9, Leader. Reference is made to the parks, gardens, allotments, amenity space. These schemes were identified and prioritised following inspections. Where are they? What was the criteria used and who prioritised them, Leader, would be my questions.
It's a small part of the budget that's allocated, but effectively we're looking at across the 4 areas, feedback from colleagues in DG First in terms of these kind of public green space areas and the priorities on where maintenance is required. It's effectively a maintaining budget. It's not large enough to be a kind of development type budget, but it's maintaining the existing assets that we have in these kind of in less formal green space areas and the allotment areas.
Jim?
Yeah, thanks, Leader. It's the same paragraph, to be honest, but it's regarding allotments. What work's been done to identify the need in the region, and have we identified any sites? It was mentioned about allotments at a previous meeting that I was at.
In relation to the allotments, there's a certain amount of work has been done in the west of the region. We certainly know of members of the public who are interested in coming forward and actually increasing the demand for allotment space. And what we've agreed to do is over the next couple of years in the business plan for the refresh for the Planning Environment Services business plan, we're adding in the development of an allotment strategy where we're reviewing the provision on the ground that we currently have against the demand, against the potential to fund and to meet that demand and respond to requests for the creation of allotments out of some of the surplus green space area that we can identify within the Council's portfolio.
We'll come back in, Jim.
Yes, thanks, Leader. It was just to remind them of the offer of a member of the public made to me in the Wigton area, that he was quite willing to assist the council to identify areas, etc., and would do it at his own expense. We might as well take as much help as we can get in this.
Chair, if I could just come back in. That meeting has taken place, Councillor, and there has been some input from the individual with my staff.
Okay, Alistair.
Thanks very much indeed, sir. Is the opportunity going to be taken, Leader, to tie this in? A very welcome development, let me make that clear from my perspective at least. Is the opportunity going to be taken to tie this into the likes of healthy living initiatives such as NHS, Dumfries and Galloway and other similar organisations? I think there is an opportunity there, sir, to build on this.
I think in terms of the strategy, we can certainly explore that. I would imagine in terms of the strategy that it is very much one of the drivers in terms of healthier living, in terms of local produce food, that maybe kind of add to the justification for the use or the conversion of green space into allotments.
Okay, can we move on to the... Oh, sorry, Ian.
Thanks, Leader. Just we're on the subject of allotments and the criteria. I wonder if we could have got that, the members could have got that information. For instance, we've stopped cutting in the last year at a particular play area. Somebody's asked, rather than it being left unkempt as they would see it, their child has special needs and would like to have made a small garden here and use it for allotments for their own particular use. If that would fit the criteria as well, just if that money's there, there's got to help kids with special needs. I think it's something we should certainly be looking at.
In terms of the allotment strategy, is very much focused on the use of allotments. I think, are you talking about play areas and special equipment for special needs?
Just to be absolutely clear, the person who approached me, it's a play park area that has no equipment on it at all, but it's been left uncut for over a year now, and it's very unkempt looking. It backs onto the back of their small garden, and they were asking, could they potentially use some of that space for help for recreational reasons for their kids.
I think if there was any part of the community that wanted to come forward and manage some of the open space that we have, that would be something that we'd be interested in hearing from on.
Alex?
Thanks, Leader. Maybe if Councillor Crothers speaks to us after the meeting, we would welcome that with open arms.
Okay, right.
Newton. One is, thanks Colin, one is Newton, which is near the Wayrock, and one is actually Newton, which is behind Newton Avenue. So just clarification of which Newton we're talking about. There's none on Newton Road, but there's people refer to two Newingtons. Just if we could get clarification on that.
Have you got an answer to that, or do you want to
We'll come back with clarification on the exact location.
Okay, can we go to the recommendations? Can we agree with the list of priority projects as detailed in the appendix? Thank you. Moving on to item 7, which is ICT Business Systems Asset Class. This is a proposed 3-year capital plan for 14-15, 16-17, and this report asks members to consider the details of the proposed 3-year capital programme for the ICT Business Systems Asset Class and seeks agreement on the proposed spend for 2014-15. As in the previous report, we're advised of the amount of money available. In this instance, it's £1.5 million, and of the proposed programme projects in 2014-15 for approval, together with the projected programmes for the following 2 financial years. Graham's here to answer any questions regarding that. Open up to members. Jim?
Yeah, thanks, Leader. Just a couple of points. The first one is it mentions in the report about new software being built, new software being considered to be bought. What safeguards are actually in place during the consideration of the new software that they will actually be able to talk to the systems that we already have in the council, because there appears to be many instances where software is bought and it doesn't talk to other software that it really needs to and should do within the council at the minute. And the second point is page 47, where the second last bullet point under the proposal details, it says expansion of our wireless infrastructure at key locations to enable agile working. Do we have a note of where these key locations are and who decided on the locations, and were any elected members actually asked what they thought were maybe key locations?
Graham?
That's it now, thanks. I'll answer the second question first. The key locations are based around business need, and we're looking at predominantly corporate meeting spaces and reception areas and interview rooms, where if we can do that, we can also benefit members of the public coming in as well. On consultation with members, the questions were asked at a previous set of consultation with groups late last year, so we got information from them. On the first question, I think the delivery arrangements are such that we've got a fairly robust process for signing on pieces of work and software upgrades, and as part of that sign-on process, we do an analysis about compatibility and connectivity with other systems. Now, that process has only been in place for the last 15-18 months, so we're now starting to see a benefit from that. There have been previous purchases where that robust analysis hadn't been, as I say, as robust as it should be, so we are improving that as we go on.
Jerry, you want Mark in? No? Okay. Ian?
Thanks, yeah. Well, just it was on the first answer, Graham, in regards to what you gave, the second last bullet point, access to the public, I think is what you're saying. Are we looking at putting wireless systems in where the public can freely access? I mean, I would certainly support that in certain parts of the council. I think that's what it sounded like.
We can't provide free, unfettered access to members of the public. Otherwise, we become what's known as an ISP, an internet service provider, and are subject to the legal constraints and monitoring constraints associated with that. And it's something we just wouldn't have the resource to do. But what we are looking to do is where a member of the public comes in to engage with the council, we would then give them the ability to access the internet. So that will be in specific locations rather than a completely open access.
Okay, Jim.
Thanks, Leader. Table 2 on page 43. I note a sum set aside for integration and joint working systems. My question is, how well integrated are our current systems?
I think my honest answer to that is it's a work in progress. We have some systems which have a high level of integration, the likes of Integra, the finance system, and iTrent, the personnel system. But when it comes to some of the other systems used by services, the integration as yet isn't as good as it could be. That money is set aside for doing some of that based on an improvement plan that we have for the website to allow citizens to come in and access information in those systems. So that's where the focus of that integration will be, into the CRM system and into the back office systems.
Okay, Ivor.
It's just with regard to the fact that we have a slight overcommitment. We have 5 projects at the end of the list on table 2, FMIS replacement. That's been on the go for a while. I take it that'll still be being one of the ones that we're seeing as a priority. And just for my own information, will I be able to use the VDI thin client?
The answer to that is yes, I hope so. The 2 items at the bottom of the table, the social care and joint working system, that's a planned upgrade this current financial year to the Framework I system. So that money will disappear. And the FMI replacement, there are new modules to go on that to web enable it and make it more functional. So hopefully again they'll go this year. As for VDI, VDI is about taking what you currently get on your desktop and putting the resource that's needed to deliver that in the centre, which means that the device can look at an awful lot more. In other words, instead of having it on your PC, you'll be able to have it on your PC and an identical one on your laptop. And we're hoping that in the future, in a few years' time, you'll actually be able to have that on your mobile device as well. So you'll get the same experience using VDI, no matter where you are.
So this is a cloud, but it's internal?
Something like that, yeah.
Okay. Can we go to the recommendations? We're asked to agree the funding allocations for 2014-15 and on an indicative basis for the subsequent 2 years as set out in the table 2. Okay. If we move on to item 8, which is property buildings non-school asset class capital programme 2014-15, 16-17. This is the third in a series of reports on the capital programme, and it deals with the property and buildings non-schools. The funding available for 2014-15 is £3.69 million, and the appendix to the report sets out the proposed projects for approval. Louise will answer any questions from members. Alistair?
Thanks very much indeed, sir. It's page 51, Leader. It's the headings, the side headings 13 and 14, Ashwood House, Stranraer, sir, refurbishment works and service improvement works, and redesign of main reception hall. On the right-hand side of the rubric, Leader, it talks about main office accommodation. Previously approved project proposed to extend scope to provide sustainable main office accommodation in Stranraer. I'm beginning to wonder, sir, where exactly this is going to stop. We seem to be, spending a significant amount of money and upgrading or supposedly upgrading and enhancing our office accommodation, particularly in the Stranraer context. And I'm not quite sure as to where exactly we're going and when we're going to realise, Leader, whether or not we've got there. So I would welcome some background information, sir, as to just exactly what is proposed here and how this fits into the greater scheme of things, Leader. Thanks very much.
Sorry, can you use your...
Sorry. With a particular project in Sederunt Chair, there's been rationalisation over the last number of years, which has seen quite a few staff going into Ashwood House. And the longer term is to have that as the main offices in Sederunt. However, there's a number of fundamental building fabric and services issues that we need to resolve with that building. For instance, the most obvious thing is the electrical system needs to be completely upgraded, which is why the scope of that project has been extended. There's no point in us putting people into that building and without addressing things that are going to ensure that the building will keep ticking over and being usable. In relation to the broader issue of property rationalisation and offices, there is a line at number 17 there with a proposal to try to completely take an overview. You can see that the spend, main spend for there is proposed 2 years down the line. There's a piece of work ongoing just now in terms of data gathering, not just in terms of our property condition and estate, but also in terms of the way that the council works, making sure that we're making full utilisation of our space, or utilising our spaces in the best way, understanding how we utilise it at present, so we can then streamline that, reduce down the number of properties we have, and make sure that we're investing our money in the right places, rather than taking any sort of piecemeal approach to doing small projects here and there, making sure that we're investing in the right properties for the long term so that we've got a sustainable estate, and specifically with this budget line, office accommodation.
Alistair?
Grateful for your indulgence, Leader, and let me back in. Can I say, sir, that I have no quibbles whatsoever with the philosophy behind what Louise has just said, but my worry is the tangible outputs, our outcomes. It seems to me that we're getting ourselves into a situation where we're spending, and I make clear, Leader, I'm restricting my comments in a Sederunt context in particular. We seem to be spending a significant amount of money, and I'm not too sure, sir, if the end product will be radically all that better than what we've started off with, albeit, as I say, I do understand the rationale of what's being said to us today. Thank you.
Maybe help, leaders. Strategically, it's fewer and better premises. The office accommodation in Sun Street will be well known to Councillor Geddes. Sometimes has it had any work done, and it needs upgrading, as Louise has said. We have emptied Dunmay House. We've moved out of the social work premises, which were in George Street. We're about to vacate Ailsa House. So what we're doing is focusing all of the councils behind the scenes work virtually in Ashwood House, and having an integrated customer services centre, as we discussed yesterday, at the library. So hopefully we will see an end in sight, Mr Geddes. I'm hoping. Once we've emptied all the buildings, there's nowhere else to go.
Yeah, I think part of Alistair's point was what the end product is, and when is the end product got to be there? But
well, without trivialising an extremely important issue, Leader, my real worry is that someone and I'll drive up the hill in Sun Street and these particular offices will not be there. They'll have been moved somewhere else.
We are concentrating on Sun Street, Councillor Geddes, and the offices will remain there, I can't say forever, but for the foreseeable future, because we're putting more and more staff into them. And obviously the staff need accommodation that's fit for purpose.
Okay, Peter.
Just a quick update on the Lochmaven Town Hall and Library integration. That's now completed, and it's so far has been very well received by the community, and I'd just like to say thank you to all those that were involved.
Okay, Ivor.
Chair, through the Scrutiny and Performance Committee, we're doing a review just now of the procurement, and with that there has been issues raised, minor ones, of process and how we make sure that what's on the papers are being delivered on time, on budget. Just wondering if through the process that we've done so far, have you picked anything up, and is there anything in here that will give us confidence that we can deliver on time and on budget?
Yes, I hope so. The first 14 of the lines on that sheet are projects that are already in hand. The remaining projects are new projects, if you like, even though they're not necessarily new builds, they're refurbishments or they're upgrades of existing things such as heating and infrastructure. And if you pick up that with some of these projects, the spend in this current year is relatively low, and then picking up in future years, for instance, with the line 17 Dumfries offices that I've just mentioned, the rolling programme of heat source, and over the page, the other rolling programmes of building fabric upgrades, electrical installations and so on. The aim is to plan that this year. We'll plan that out, we'll programme it out, make sure that we've got the right resource, the right scope of the various different projects that we're prioritising within each of the rolling programmes in terms of the need, what needs to be upgraded first and so forth, with the bigger spend coming in the next couple of years. So it's very much the aim to make sure that we programme things out so that we can deliver on what we're saying, and that we manage the risks that we've got, and that we get the best that we possibly can out of the budgets that are set.
Okay, everyone back in.
With the ones that are already in train, I think it was the first 14, there was a evidence session last week with regard to how we can make sure we're getting the right thing at the right time from DG First, whereby if they get the award of the contract through the service agreement, our commissioning role, they like to come in earlier so that they can deliver. Are we doing that within those? And the ones that aren't internal, how can we make sure that the contractors are getting in at a time where they can actually say, well, no, you can't do that, or watch out, there's, as we found out, there's a mains water running there that shouldn't be there, things like that.
We have monthly meetings with DG First at the moment, Chair, where the aim is very much to make sure that they understand what's in the programme so that they can assess if they can then do the project for us, or if we'll need to look elsewhere to get the resource. So those communications do happen, and there's obviously need to improve that and make sure that we keep that momentum up.
I think that following on from the work of scrutiny, I've been considering, in fact, just this week, improvements that could be made to the project management, and perhaps bringing all of our various projects into one single point within the council, and a simplistic, I think it's property will know, some sort of RAG report, red, amber, green, that sits at the top. But actually, I think one of the problems we've got is a number of projects, be the projects reported here, or other projects, sit in isolation in different services. And I think the idea of pulling them together under one single accountability, I think, would be useful for members, so you don't have to hunt around where to go. So, following on the work of scrutiny, I'm looking to bring something forward that pulls that together organisationally, so there'll be a single point of ownership for all these projects, even though they could be getting delivered in various parts of the council, would allow that direct oversight for members.
John.
Thanks, Leader. Page 51, the public toilet provision. I hope there is a recognition that there are more candidate toilets for upgrading than those listed in the paper here. I can certainly think of at least 2 badly in need of upgrading.
Yes, Chair. The 10 that are listed there are simply the ones in 2014-15 between ourselves, DG First, and Planning and Environment Services. There's a list of prioritised investment required at many more than just the list that's here, which is just the first tranche of the top 10, if you like, that desperately need investment.
Okay, can we move to the recommendations? 2.1, can we agree to funding allocations as outlined in Appendix 1? And can we note the anticipated acceleration in 2014-15 from the 2015-16 as described in 3.5? Okay, if we move on to item 9, which is Service Review, Training and Development Services. This is a report by the Head of Organisational Development and Human Resources. Understand everybody's received an annex. I don't know what an annex is to an appendix, but we've got an annex to this report. We've been asked to agree to the scope for the service review of training and development services. This is one that came from originated in the scrutiny committee way back. You'll see that all the budgets for training and development are detailed on page 60 and subdivided into statutory, policy and discretionary budgets. Officers are recommending that the review should not only improve the way in which we provide training and development, but also achieve a value for money saving of £230,000, which we'd welcome. The decision to undertake this review by the Scrutiny and Performance Committee and forms part of a series of reviews undertaken across the Council. I'm sure that Paul and Dan will provide any clarification. Joe?
Sorry, Chair, it's just regarding the annex that we got today prior to committee. I don't know about everybody else, but I certainly haven't had an opportunity to read it all. There's a substantial number of pages here, but it was just to make that point. In future, it would be good if we had it within the correct timescale.
Yeah, I completely understand that. I believe there was an apology, but you're right. We don't need apologies. We need the papers to have a look at. But I think because it's a process thing, we might get away with it this time. But Jim?
Yeah, thanks, Leader. It's on page 55. It's points 3.13 and 3.14. Sorry, 3.14 and 3.15. It says that the systems for collating and reporting on spending and effectiveness of training and development are mainly through manual records in each department, but these are not complete. We've had IT systems for a long time. Why are we still in manual records, and why are they not being completed? And then on 3.15, it says existing data systems in the council have capacity to record training and development, but these have not yet been exploited. My question there would be, why?
It's up to you, Dan. I think Paul's not here. Well, he's out the back. Right? So.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the comprehensive review did reveal kind of what we already knew as officers, that departments have their own manual systems for recording training, and that the iTrent system, which was introduced some years ago to support our personnel and payroll systems, has capacity to record and monitor that information. Principally, the reason behind that is to do with the fact that departments, by and large, are concerned with supporting the technical and service-based specific skills of staff, and that has, up until this point in time, been seen as a separate entity to that of supporting the core skills of staff through the corporate development unit. So there has been a divergence of process in terms of how that information is recorded. It's never been required to be joined up before, but certainly in the context of the workforce strategy, which is kind of guiding this review, it is essential that we do pull all that information together so we have a comprehensive profile of the skills of staff, and we can look at gaps and move forward to the future to become a learning organisation. So yes, that is very much an issue that we want to address through the review.
Okay, Alistair.
Thanks very much indeed. Thanks very much indeed, sir. 3.9, 3.13 and 3.16, Leader. In relation to 3.9, sir, a further review of the underlying reason for this and their impact needs to be undertaken. I would certainly agree with that, and my question in relation to that, sir, would be, how is that going to be done and when is it going to be done? In relation to 3.13, sir, it talks about the budgets being supplemented with other resources to invest in training and development. It would be helpful, sir, to get some illustration today of just exactly what's meant by that. And lastly, Leader, 3.16, overall, though this is very much an underdeveloped area, the third sector have indicated that they wish to play a greater role in helping to facilitate improved partnership training arrangements across our region. In principle, totally supportive of that, Leader. How are we going to address it, and what timescale are we talking about, sir? Thank you.
Okay, so it's a when, detail and how.
The when principally is that the systems and methodology and way in which we harness our
resources is coming back to committee scheduled for September. So this, in a sense, has been quite an exhaustive analysis to find out what it is that we think are the issues and gaps in the way that we run our services. So the principal point of that is September. In relation to how we can pool our resources and work more efficiently and effectively with our colleagues in NHS and other sectors of the public sector. I mean, that is also subject to the kind of how we're going to do this and achieve the objectives that we've set in 3.18. I'm not sure if that actually kind of covers all the points, but that's the direction of travel.
Yeah. Perhaps, Councillor Geddes, one of the issues that the scrutiny has identified is exactly the issue that you were alluding to, that how does mother money come in? If you think about the way that money comes from the government, it talks about change funds, and it'll talk about funds to support GLOW. Part of that, and a large part of that, could be training, but it's not been viewed corporately as investment in training. It disappeared into the silo of the professional silo, and some of the barriers we've had is people have jealously guarded the professional investment, but actually never had to justify it because it was being funded elsewhere. What we're saying is that there is real scope from the work of scrutiny and identification to make these savings and make it better, by the clear identification of our investment in people. And actually, as we get these grants, to be reporting to committee what exactly they're for in more detail than usually the headline, and how it would look to be spent. Because I think that would then start to reveal how you actually deliver on the outcome, particularly as we know that a lot of the money comes in very close to the year end. So therefore it's about trying to pull that together here and actually bring the professional training and the corporate skills training. In full council will be receiving another report in which about how do we train our staff for other opportunities within the council, which will start to pull more of this together for members about the opportunity that we need the corporate control in these training budgets. But I'm confident from the work that was already been done to this point that these savings are achievable, and a much better product and a much better training for our staff can come from it if we strategically have that oversight.
Okay, Jane.
Thank you. That sort of slightly leads me on. We're talking about the scope of the savings and the scope of the review here, and I'm looking at the savings proposals on page 56. It's not entirely clear to me as to why we plumped for 7.5%. We seem to have thought that 7.5% seems to be kind of sort of reasonable. I don't know why we've actually selected that, leader. So I think possibly, when we come to doing the review, I think we might want to explore exactly why we plumped for that particular figure. Because, I mean, I thought this bit was actually a really good bit of work. It revealed all sorts of kind of warts and all and cans of worms and things which we've got to get at. But I would like to know why we plumped for that. Well, can I do that? I'll come back.
Well, let's go into
the 7.5% is to be regarded as where we start from. So what I'd be asking members to do, and perhaps it's about clarification, is to follow the process that would involved in PES, where a range of options at different savings levels were presented at the end of the product for members' consideration. And it's really just to say that we shouldn't be looking to redesign the service that will deliver any less than 7.5, but other options may come forward to members. And I think what you're saying here is you'd want those options clear for you to consider that may be more palatable. But no, it's just to say we don't want any people thinking below that number. We regard that as a minimum. So you start your innovation at 7.5%.
Okay, can we go to the recommendations we've considered? Oh, sorry, Jane.
Sorry, would you mind very much if I asked the second question, which is about health and social care, which came forward at kind of déjà vu in the previous review, asked for maximising the opportunities that we could make with the NHS. And we've got a huge piece of work to do with respect to health and social care. I mean, can that be got in with the bricks? It's not specific here, but I'd be very helpful to know that that's going to happen.
Absolutely, and members will be pleased to hear that it's money held currently in the NHS that we'll be applying to. And in the first consideration of the shadow board will be to examine that money, but no, the money that's currently held within that was top sliced in the council, is held within the NHS budget, will be applied to deliver the necessary training under health and social care. It will not be drawn from the council's budget.
Thanks, Chairman. I think on the back of what Councillor Maitland's saying, I think we should identify 7.5 as a minimum. That's absolutely a valid point. But with other services, we're saying 5, 10, 15 and 20. We're not going as far as 20. I think that's important that we don't go as far as 20. We'll leave it at 15 because the council will be coming under a tremendous amount of pressure as these budget cuts come forward, and that's why I wouldn't be proposing certainly 20 for this particular service that we're looking at, because we need the staff trained to the highest level we possibly can.
I would expect it not to stop at 15 if it's possible, but
I think perhaps if members are happy that we say that the minimum 7.5%, but the face of the report will identify opportunities, because the opportunities are probably individual rather than at 10 or 15, which might constrain thinking. I think if we say that it would be 7.5% plus opportunities for further savings if members wish to take them, with the risks, etc., around those. That's probably the easiest way to do it, given the fact that it's over such a broad range of activities. It might be one or two individual things that members wish to take. So if members are happy with that, 7.5 plus clear identification of other opportunities with the risks attached to those.
Okay, yeah, Ivor.
Chair, with regard to the 7.5, surely there's bound to be, I take it that's not just out of this budget, because you could actually achieve a saving in a team by actually training someone up who could deliver a service more efficiently. Will that come against part of the savings as well?
I think if we're looking at the people who deliver training development services, as I hope to have pointed out in the review, there are people out there who've got large generic skill sets who are not they're working in isolation of each other, and that is one thing that we want to look at in terms of the efficiency in which we deploy people to deliver the service as one service potentially. The other point I wanted to kind of just make is a practical one. As from this autumn, we will be introducing technology which will, for the first time, deliver comprehensive electronic-based learning in the workplace, and that in itself, as mentioned in the report, would need to be monitored in terms of any other savings that might accrue from that. So very much as has been said through the Chief Executive, it's a starting point, and there are lots of areas that we need to be mindful of, and it's a starting point.
Everyone back in.
Chair, I'm not sure if I'm picking it up right or if you've picked me up right. What I was thinking of, say we look at the review, but there's no actual cash saving in the service. However, by improving the service that we give out to the staff elsewhere, you could get savings in the actual, if it was CCS or education or social work, would they come back to count against your budget?
The budgetary figures that I've quoted are largely held within departments. About 85% of the monies identified sit directly within departments, or the Chief Executive Service currently has no control over that, but I would guess that you're correct in saying that that's where savings could accrue.
Okay, can we go to the recommendations? We've considered, can we, 2.1, we've considered that. 2.2, can we agree with the scope and desired outcomes? Sorry, did you want? No. Okay. Okay. Moving on to item 10, delivering an enhanced modern apprenticeship programme. This is really a positive news story, so you can guarantee it will not get any media coverage. It does show that the Council's commitment to enhancing employability in Dumfries and Galloway through our enhanced modern apprenticeship programme, which now of course goes hand in hand with additional measures agreed in the budget in February to support the apprenticeships out with the Council. Appendix 1, it shows that we have employed 169 modern apprentices across the Council, and all of these youngsters are being provided with an excellent apprenticeship which will stand them in good stead for the future. There are a considerable number of statistics in Appendix 2, and I'm sure that members may have questions on these. We are also now looking to recruit a further 79 youngsters during 2014-15, and I'm sure that Paul and Claire will be pleased to answer any questions. Yeah. Members?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, hugely successful programme, and I think very welcomed by the individuals who are now modern apprentices, and I've spoken to a few myself and they've been great. They're thoroughly enjoying it. I'm pleased that the survey has highlighted the lack of marketing, because I think that was a big problem, still is a big problem. So I think it's not just a case of the teams going into the schools, it's about making the senior managers and the teachers within the schools more aware of the programme as well, because certainly from my experience it's not terribly evident in any of the schools that I've been in. And the interviewing skills, again, I think there should be a greater onus on the schools to ensure that the kids are more skilled up for an interview before they even leave school. Again, I know there's a number of pupils who are leaving school going for interviews, they've never had an interview in their lives, and it's quite a daunting process for them. So, while it's good that the training can be provided on the job for future interviews, they've got to get the modern apprenticeship in the first place, and if they've not got the skills for that, then that's an issue. So if you could feedback, that would be appreciated. Two other questions. The number of candidates applying at 16 is significantly less than the 17, 18, 19. Or rather the number of successful candidates. Is that because there's less 16-year-olds applying, or is it because the departments are sort of showing a preference maybe for a slightly older age group with maybe a better skill base? And my final question, of the 36 that for whatever reason have left, obviously the ones that have gone into employment, if they've left quite early in the process, say sort of 5 months in or 3 months in, do we re-advertise that apprenticeship? Because I think, again, it's crucial that if that opportunity isn't being taken up by one individual, that it should be offered to another. And I think that's all I've got for now, but thank you.
Okay, Claire.
Thank you. Oh. In terms of the statistics in Appendix 2 with the start age of the candidates, there's less 16-year-olds because of the leavers date that's tied into schools. So schools are keen to keep a number of young people until they reach their official school leaver date, which actually means they're nearer their 17th birthday than they are their 16th birthday. In terms of leavers, it's tied into funding, so the modern apprentices, as they go through the apprenticeship, reach a number of milestones, and that then allows us to draw down funding from Skills Development Scotland. If a leaver leaves before the drawdown of their first milestone, which is about the 4 or 5 month period, then we're able to re-advertise that post. If we've had drawdown against that post, then we're unable to re-advertise that post because of the funding restrictions applied to it. Yes, if it's before the first drawdown. And just in terms of your observation around about interview techniques, our colleagues in the employability and skills team are working really closely with secondary schools across the region, looking at that very issue in terms of quality of applications, not just to apprenticeships, but to general job opportunities, and quality of interview techniques and learning interview techniques before they leave school.
Yeah, I think that final point's crucial, and I don't think it should be down to the employability and skills teams in isolation or this particular programme. There needs to be a greater emphasis on the staff already in the schools day to day. They have personal and social education classes once a week in most schools. They need to be utilising time better within, whether it be an interview for a school captainship or whether it be an interview for a modern apprenticeship. They're not skilling a lot of these kids up to be confident enough to speak in that environment. And I think, again, if we can take that back through education, possibly through Jeff, and make sure that the schools are really pulling their socks up as well. Because I know a lot of people who have left this year who, when you say to them, you're applying for a job, what you're going to do in the interview, they go, I don't know. I haven't been taught how to do an interview. So, you know, and that's a worry for less confident children.
I think the Chief wants to make a...
We had a meeting last week with Skills Development Scotland, and one of the things that we were asking was with them, and they agreed, was the development of a work ready certificate specific for Dumfries and Galloway that would carry credence with employers. So it's involving employers in developing a work ready certificate that every employer would then recognise as those are the skills of honesty, integrity, confidence that would be applied, and that would be able to be targeted at those children that we saw that were going to not go forward to further education at the right, but prepare them for the job interview and the skills that are necessary for achieving that. Because one of the things we identified, and it's very helpful, and I'm sure Councillor Smith, who was there from the local employer, was what he was looking for was that work readiness, not particularly more technical skills. He wanted to have someone who was confident, articulate, understood what work was about. So we agreed that we'd look to develop such a product so that it would be available to teachers as part of their toolkit to concentrate on those children who were going to the vocational route straight into work rather than on and have to then go to the college to get it. We give it in school. So we'll be looking to bring something back to Education Committee after the recess.
John, you want the same point?
Yeah, just on the back of that, at Wallace Hall Academy, under the Queensberry Initiative programme, we actually do a mentoring service where the children go through a work ready project, and they also have the Rotary Club in Thornhill and business people come in on a mentoring system, and they actually mentor the children on how to answer the questions from interview and what would be expected of them. So they actually do that programme already, but I think it's very helpful that it's going to be rolled out across the region.
Okay, we've got Ivor, Sean, Jim, then Colin.
Chair, I was just wondering if it was possible within the figures to say whether we actually had some successful looked after children. We were at the strategic partnership where there was a young lady who was very, I think, what was the word you used, Gavin, articulate earlier on there to say ready for work, and she was very good. And I would like to think that we have one or two who have had the opportunity to go in here. I think Councillor McKee always goes on about the fact that sort of guaranteed interviews. Just wondering if that was happening, and were we fulfilling our corporate parent role?
I did a briefing for Councillor McKee quite recently on that issue, and I've got that information that I can share more widely with members after the committee in detail. But in summary, it's quite difficult for us to track the success of a young person who's either vulnerable or disabled or has been through the looked after children system, because we don't explicitly ask them those questions if they've been through the system or if they have a disability. And for young people who are perhaps suffering from mental health issues, it's not visible to us that they've got that disability unless they choose to share that with us. So the only young people who fall into those categories that we've been able to track and provide statistics for are those young people who have applied for apprenticeships through either the Young People's Support Service or the social work colleagues in the looked after children's teams, or the Support Employment Service colleagues who we know have supported those young people with their application through the process to successfully secure an apprenticeship. There might be many, many more that have got to that point in the apprenticeship without any support from any organisation. But just in summary, to date, or certainly at the end of March this year, we had 6 young people who had secured an apprenticeship that had a disability. We had one young person who had been through the looked after children's system who had secured an apprenticeship. We had a further 5 young people who had been supported by YPSS to apply for an apprenticeship, and out of that 5, 2 of them successfully were recruited into an apprenticeship. But as I say, those statistics are not 100% accurate, because there might be other young people who fall into those categories that choose not to share that information with us. So what we're currently trying to do is work closely with colleagues in social work and within education to look at how we can better track those young people so that we can come back to committee and provide you with more comprehensive stats and information on that very issue. But if members like, I can share the report that I did for Councillor McKee more widely with members that just goes into a bit more detail about the process that we're going to go through to do that.
I just want to ask a general question, so I'll do it at the end once you've taken people.
Then Sean.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, that's the second year of the programme, and, you know, I think it's encouraging, this report, particularly when you think that's 100 and probably 180 that are actually through the system already, and our final intake of 79 is coming up this year. It's looking towards the success of how we measure the success of the project. Obviously, all the ones that complete the 3 years, then that's a positive end outcome and move on to a different destination. And even when you look at the leavers, 36, I would say most of those have left for a positive destination. I think there's only 8 that probably weren't suitable. So I'm just wondering is that something where we measure the success, not only the ones that complete it, but the ones that leave, so that at the end of it, I think you're looking at the moment, if there's no other kind of leavers of the last intake, you're probably looking at only about maybe 15 that have not had a positive end destination. One thing that, just when you look at the stats, and I know most opportunities, there's a wide range of opportunities for our young people, and it's just about, we also keep stats on the ones that actually travel to work, but it's the hard to reach areas and what we do, because obviously we want to encourage people to come in maybe from the rural areas and into, you know, Nithsdale seems to be the main area where a lot of the opportunities are, and that's because that's where most of the services being provided for. But just maybe if you could talk through what you do to encourage more people to come in to the centre.
Okay, I'll answer your first question first in terms of leavers. We're just reaching the end of the second year, so we've just moved into the third year of the programme. The programme's effectively split into 2 stages. So in year 1 and 2 of the programme, we are encouraging the young people to gather work-based experience, do their SVQ and gain other relevant qualifications towards the job that they're working towards. And then in year 3, it's primarily focused on work-based experience, which they can either do internally within the council in the job that they've been doing for the first 2 years, or they can choose if they wish to go out and get a different type of work experience in the private sector. So if a young person leaves before the end of their second year, particularly for those that leave and find a positive destination within the local authority, we work with the department that they're going to go and work for, to make sure that we still allow them some time to complete their SVQ and their qualification. So it means that even leavers are effectively leaving the programme with their qualification and as skilled as we can possibly get them. In terms of the jobs and the location of those across the region, it's primarily down to departments to decide which opportunities they want to advertise, based on their succession planning arrangements and their workforce planning arrangements. But we've been working really closely with department management teams and directors to look at the locality of jobs. So to encourage departments to not necessarily base a job in the centre and in Nithsdale if that post doesn't heavily rely on being in that locality, that there are posts that could be delivered from anywhere in the region, and that there have been some posts gone out with the base negotiable, which means that we've opened out that opportunity to a wide range of people across the whole region, and we would locate them in their own locality because they would still be able to deliver that job from there. So we are trying as far as possible, whilst taking your point that the statistics do show that a high number of the posts are within Nithsdale because of the location of central services in Nithsdale. But as far as possible, we do try to look across the region so that as many opportunities as possible are out in localities where young people can access them without having to travel.
Okay, Jim.
Yeah, thanks, Leader. It's really just a follow-on for Sean's point on Appendix 4. Those that know me will ken that I have a great deal of interest in figures. We must be doing something right when over 60% of those that have actually left have left for what you would call positive destinations, that are either employed by us or employed out with, or have returned to college. But the one that does kind of worry me a little is of those leavers that left that weren't suited for the post or left for personal reasons. That's about 30% of the leavers. And also, personal reasons can cover a multitude of events. Are we sure that the personal reasons are personal in their life and they're not personal reasons, i.e. a conflict between themselves and who they're actually working with?
Yeah, happy to answer that. In terms of the the percentage looks quite high, even though the numbers are quite low. It's obviously equates to quite a high percentage. The 8 that weren't suited to the post were young people who had just made the wrong decision in terms of their career. And when a young person tells us they want to leave an apprenticeship, we don't just say that's fine. We spend a lot of time with that young person trying to look at whether there are underlying issues that we need to address, whether we need to put additional support mechanisms in place for them to sustain their apprenticeship. But the bottom line is, for some young people, they've just fundamentally made a wrong decision. And as Councillor McGregor pointed out, some of these young people are 16. They've come straight from school. They do what they think they want to do as a career, but actually once they get into it, they realise they've made a wrong decision. In terms of the 3 individuals that have left the programme for personal reasons, they were personal reasons that were completely unrelated to work and were not issues that we were able to do anything about.
Okay, Colin.
Thanks, Leader. I think it's important that we start to look maybe beyond the 3-year period and start to consider what we can do after the end of this 3-year scheme. It's been an incredibly positive scheme, but we're obviously entering a period where we're going to be looking towards a 3-year budget. So what will come beyond this particular apprenticeship scheme that funding's in place for a 3-year period, and it comes back to the point made by the Chief Executive earlier about the very positive discussions that's been had with Skills Development Scotland Board recently, and the way in which they're looking at ways in which they can bring additional support and resources into Dumfries and Galloway. I think it's also important that we don't look at this in isolation to the other work that's being done in the budget that was set in February, which obviously put substantial resources into a new employability policy for the council. And one of the things members will remember that they agreed to in that budget was additional resources towards link workers and employability officers working within schools. And it comes back to the point that Councillor McGregor made about making sure that our pupils are ready effectively to go forward to some of these things. So it can't be looked at, it is being reported here as a project, because it's a corporate project, but we can't look at this in isolation to the significant other investment that's being made through P&E as a result of the budget in February. But we do need to look what do we need to do next, and bringing some of these things together and continuing to bring in external funding from other organisations to build on what is an incredibly positive story, as the leader said earlier.
Okay, can we recommendations? Sorry, John. Sorry, I forgot about you.
Okay, thank you. It was really just to put on record, I mean, it is a very good news story for the youngsters who have taken up this opportunity. But if you look at 3.12 and 3.13, you'll see that 100 members of our own staff have actually volunteered, of council staff have actually volunteered to mentor and to actually take up the training to go along with that. And I think we should really be putting on record from this committee our grateful thanks to them for doing that, because I think that's very useful for the youngsters who have come forward. And I do think we should make sure that they understand that we appreciate what they've actually done and the assistance that they've given. I just think that we should do that.
Absolutely, I think we can all agree to that, and if we make them aware of the councillors' feelings, you know, that they're very much appreciate what they're doing, you know, for the youngsters and taking things forward. Okay. About 2.1, 2.2, and 2.3. Sorry.
So I'm right at the side. I'm right in the blind side. You know, I just agree with what Councillor Dykes is saying. I was going to mention that we should certainly put our thanks on record, and we'd like to see that in a minute. The other point I've just got to bring up was we had a meeting, probably would be about a year ago now, somewhere about there, where we had a chance to meet the apprentices, speak to them face to face, we got an understanding of how they felt, how they went forward. I mean, if that chance came up again, it's certainly much appreciated. I think it was a great chance to get involved, have direct communications with apprentices to see how they were going.
Okay, moving on to item 11. Again, a positive story which shows the Council's commitment to preparing our youngsters for adulthood and employment by providing a number of local graduates with an employment experience. Last year's Council budget allocated £100,000 to support a second full intake of graduates onto the graduate experience employment programme, which provides for 7 places of 8 months duration. Along with fellow elected members, I recently met with the graduates and was hugely impressed with the employment experience they have gained and the successful next steps they are taking to advance their careers. I'm sure that, again, Dan and Paul will be happy to take questions. Alistair?
Thanks very much indeed, Leader. Paragraph 3.11 of the report, sir, it talks about a total of 29 applications were received for the 7 places. My question in relation to that, sir, would be how many of the 29 were from Wigtonshire, and secondly, there were 15 were selected for final interview. Again, my question there, sir, would be how many of these 15 were received were from Wigtonshire?
Chair, the information I have in relation to 3.11 was that, to the best of my knowledge, we received no applications, therefore there were no candidates taken forward, hence the statistic that's in the box there.
I think there is a follow-up to that. We didn't receive any application. It's the reason why we didn't, and I think it's quite disappointing, that it seems unique to that area, but whether we can do something about that. So,
further to that point, I think the fact that we only received 29 applications was probably a victim of the particular timing that was applied in this instance. It was an unfortunately low number, and a lesson has been learned from that to assure that this time around for the graduates that we are assessing at the end of June, I am pleased to report that we have shifted the timing and we have 78 applications. So I think timing is critical. But as to other factors, I don't have any information to answer that point specifically.
Yeah, I see one back in.
I would indeed, sir, with your leave. I'm grateful to you. Let me assure you, Leader, and colleagues as well, that my question was not parochially motivated, but a recent meeting of the Welfare Reform Subcommittee, I think it was Councillor Crothers, who indicated on the basis of certain statistical information that was being provided that, quote, he worried about Wigtonshire. Now, I would say that there's a lot of us spend a lot of time worrying about Wigtonshire. And at the end of the day, I think there may be issues here which we're going to have to address on the basis of going forward, Leader. I'll leave it at that today, sir. Thank you.
Okay, Sean.
Yeah. It was just in relation to Appendix 1. I think I took the opportunity to meet the modern apprentices and the graduates. I think it was organised here last year. And I'm glad to see as well, though, that the feedback that we received, and also the written feedback here, some of it's been acted upon, because certainly with the graduates, I think what they said was 6 months was too short. By the time they got embedded into the department, maybe took a month or 2 months. So I know 8 months is probably still a little bit shorter than what we'd probably like, but it's a step in the right direction. So as we're developing that, so that at least we're getting probably at least 6 months of good hard work out and learning for the graduates out of that.
Thank you, Chair, for that comment.
I'll just say
You're absolutely right. I think we're trying to make this project-based, but I think one of the things that we clearly recognised is that the main universities and colleges weren't really bought into this. And through the Crichton Leadership Group now, we personally spoke to them, and actually, even though there's 70 at this time, there'll be a lot more next time, as I've been able to speak to the principals of the 2 main universities, and also the college. We need to be, I think that might answer the Wigtonshire, that we need to get the college more involved about promoting HNC candidates to come through to us. The second issue is that even though it's 8 months, we're now what we're offering is pathways into employment, either back through the university career structure. What the universities have agreed, when we finish with them, they'll be able to access back into the university career structures to place them. That wasn't available before because we weren't locked in. My view is I'd like to expand this more, given the scale of the challenges and change that we face, that actually having people at the peak of their learning coming in to do 11 months and how many days before we get into employment issues, work is actually what the council should be about, bringing this talent in that short piece of period. But obviously that will need to form part of our our future discussions around the budget and other issues, but I would have to say that the standard of some of the work, I received a presentation on the improvement toolkit. I think we could sell that across Scotland. The work is of that standard. And so I've been amazed by what they've been able to produce, but it's right. I think our job is incumbent, as with the Modern Apprentice, to manage their pathway after the council as well. And certainly there's more than enough officers willing to help in that journey because the product is so good.
Okay, John.
Yeah, thanks, Leader. Just before I bring the cloud, I'll say that I think this has been a totally worthwhile project. However, I will be parochial towards Wigtonshire. I hear everything that's been said, yet we still had no applications for Wigtonshire. Bearing in mind that there was none of the projects actually based in the Stranraer area may be a reason why there was no applications for Wigtonshire. We do have IT systems across there, and be reading the outline of the projects that were actually undertaken, a lot of it would actually be internet based. So we could have accessed that for Wigtonshire, and also from Appendix 1, the lessons learned and improvement actions. There's nothing actually in there says what we're going to do to actually get folk for Wigtonshire to actually apply, and there's also nothing says that we'll actually put anything in Wigtonshire so that we can have a graduate actually working out of a Wigtonshire office.
I think that's the point I was trying to make. You know, we need to look into the reasons why it wasn't there, and you've highlighted some of them, but you know, I think it needs a bit more work than what you've actually said and what's done. But I think that's it should be a given that we won't be looking into taking that forward. Okay. If we can go to the recommendations, we've reviewed. Can we, at 2.1, can we note 2.2? Okay. Moving on to item 12, this is disposal of High Cemetery Lodge, Craigs Road. We're being asked to consider two offers which have been received for the purchase of High Cemetery Lodge. The recommendation is that the property is sold to the highest bidder. However, we should recognise the outstanding work of the food train, an important contribution they make to meeting this council's priorities. I'm aware that officers are actively working with them to identify other properties that might be available for lease or purchase. Alex or Louise will answer any questions. Members? Jill?
No, it was just to say that I'm pleased to hear that officers are working with the food train. They do a very valuable job in our region and across other areas as well. And I think it's the right thing for us to do to try and assist them to look for alternative accommodation as well.
Absolutely, yeah. No other members? Can we agree the recommendations? Note 2.1 and agree 2.2?
Agreed.
Moving on to item 13, this is a vacancy teacher representative on the Education Committee, secondary sector. We're being asked to agree the timetable for filling the vacancy on the Education Committee as a result of the resignation of Timothy Burrell as secondary sector teacher representative. I understand that the timetable has been somewhat lengthened as a consequence of the pressure in election staff as a result of the European election and the referendum, and to take account of the school summer holidays. I also understand that Tim has resigned on health grounds, which have sadly also meant he will be leaving his teaching post in August. I'm sure you'll all join with me in thanking Tim for the very significant contribution he has made in the Education Committee during his period of office, and wishing him well for the future. Can Ira?
Chair, just with regard to the timetable, is it not I noticed that we had a press release about issues with postal votes. Just with the regard to the referendum, just about a week later, should we be sending them out prior to the referendum? Should we not just put the packages out after, just to make sure that there's no mix-up?
The packages go to the teaching staff and go through the schools. So it'll be absolutely clear that you're voting for a teacher election and you're voting in the referendum, but they will come totally differently, sir.
When you go and see some of these ballot papers where it says put an X and they still have 1, 2, 3, 4, you know, sometimes you have to just watch out just for these issues.
Alistair?
Chair, in the appendix in the fifth box down on the left, sir, is not issue of postal voting packages to secondary teaching staff?
Absolutely, sir. I've just read that mistake.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Thanks for pointing out, Councillor Geddes. Can we note the timetable to fill the vacancy? Sorry, Ian.
It's on a side to this, but it's related in a way. Parent council representation. Thought it might have maybe seen something to do with that at the same time. Is there any progress on that? We've discussed that. Education would refer to this committee, as far as I'm aware, of full council.
I would need to come back to the member on that. I'm not aware of that particular issue.
Yeah. But, okay, can we note the timetable? Of other business? Oh, sorry.
Sorry,
John.
it was just on that and going back to Tim Birrell, and I just wondered whether it would be appropriate for the leader to write to Tim Birrell and actually thank him for what he has actually done, because he's been here for a long time. I just think that would be appropriate.
Thanks for that. Will do. Yep. Okay, other business. Thank you. Thank you.
Leader, I suggest that we have a siesta